What's up, everybody? Welcome into this Monday edition of Pushing the Pile, Mock Draft Monday. Free agency is coming, kind of gone. I mean, there's still actually a good amount of big name free agents left, but basically the dust has settled in terms of team needs. I think that's the biggest thing. I always say that it's kind of entertainment before you get to this point in the season doing mock drafts. It's more just pigeonholing where guys could go. It's more of like a projection of a draft board, but now it gets kind of serious because no one's really filling out any more needs from now until the draft. So we know where the needs lie and we know basically the players that would fill them for this. But to me, the position that I think is going to decide this, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, JP, is offensive line. Because depending on who you sort of talk to and who you trust as an evaluator, there are as many as 3 guys in this class, in this offensive tackle class, that people see as interior offensive linemen. Francis Maui-Noa from Miami, Spencer Fano from Utah, and Caden Proctor from Alabama being kind of the big ones there that just aren't your prototypical tackle sort of traits guys, even if they play tackle at the collegiate level. So how the evaluations of them go and which teams think they're more tackle than guard, I think decides a lot of how the top 10 ends up shaking out.
I definitely agree. And I think it comes back down to when we look at offensive line and the offensive line play in general, it's always going to be a premium position, all 5. So you're going to see a lot of offensive linemen go in the first round, even though we've already sort of said that this offensive line class is it's going to take a little bit more projection and a little bit more conjecture than usual with a lot of these prospects. So I'm really curious to see how the true tackles, like guys that sort of are believed to be pure tackles at the NFL level, how they start to fall, especially after Monroe Freeling's combine, where he sort of locked up a top 10 pick.
Yes, I'm right there with you. I love what you said off the rip there, that there's no devalued offensive line position, whether it's center, where Tyler Linderbaum just got a contract that was worth, I think, $7 million more per year than Fred Warner, right? $7 million more per year than Saquon Barkley. Like, there is no position along the offensive line that in today's NFL you can just say, we'll get by with nothing there. It's like they're all premium positions, all 5. So even if one of those guys does have to be a guard at the next level or center at the next level, it's still probably worth the top 10 pick, especially in this draft. So without further ado, let's get into how I see the offensive line class shaking out and how I see this draft shaking out. You can go check it out on cbssports.com. My first round mock coming out of free agency. Number 1, no surprise, it's Fernando Mendoza, the Indiana quarterback, going to the Las Vegas Raiders. We don't need to stick on that one. Number 2, I don't know if this is consensus. I didn't look at a bunch of other mocks before I did mine. I more just based it off of how I feel these guys are as prospects and how the NFL will see them. And because of that, this one, I'm not going to go anywhere other than Arvell Reese until someone tells me otherwise for the New York Jets.
I think Arvell Reese is one of the 3 best prospects in this draft class. And I think it makes sense for what the Jets have already done in free agency. They added Kingsley Enagbare. They've added Joseph Osai. And they added Demario Davis to a front 7 that already has Will McDonald. They added T'Vondre Sweat via trade. So it feels like they've added to the defensive line a bunch of secondary pass rushers.
Yes.
And then there's still the capability of having a guy like Arvell Reese, who can rotate between edge and off-ball linebacker with Demario Davis, Jamie and Sherwood. And there's nobody else better to learn how to play linebacker from than Demario Davis. So you can have Arvell Reese sort of be that hybrid, that guy that changes your fronts depending on who you're playing. And it just makes sense for how the rest of this Jets roster is built defensively.
Yes, I'm in complete agreement with you there. That sort of their signaling over the past 2 weeks makes it feel like Arvell Reese is the pick, whether it's the Jermaine Johnson trade, the signing of a couple edges who are not starting edges, right? They are definitely depth piece edges. And then the Demario Davis signing as well. All that, to me, the tea leaves are saying it's Arvell Reese too, because I think, you're the Jets right now, you can kind of make up your mind, right? You know what's happening at number 1 overall. You are the inflection point there. So you got your pick of the rest. And I think for all those reasons, it's going to be Reese. Now, 3 is where it really gets interesting. where I cannot make heads or tails of where the Arizona Cardinals are going to go. And this goes back to the tackle to guard converts conversation that we had off the top, and why I have Spencer Fano going here, the Utah tackle, right tackle, which would be, I think, probably the Cardinals' biggest need. They signed Elijah Wilkinson in free agency. That ain't moving the needle in terms of if I want an offensive tackle here, I'm still drafting one. I think quality of prospect wise, he is the offensive lineman in this draft class I feel the best about. Now, is he a tackle with 32 and an eighth inch arms that he measured in at the combine? One, I think those measurements were probably a bit low historically with how they've measured it. Two, because I tweeted this out, but his wingspan was actually longer than Tristan Wirfs with 32 and an eighth inch arms, which would suggest that his shoulder width is almost 4 inches longer than Tristan Wirfs, which just seems outrageous to me when you watch Spencer Fano play. So I think there was some measurement tomfoolery going on, or just it wasn't measured with how they historically used to do it with offensive linemen. So I think his arms might be a little bit longer. When you watch him on tape, I think he at least has the mirroring ability and quickness with his hands to make up for having shorter arms. I think he could be a tackle, specifically in Michael LaFleur's scheme. And if that's the case, I think that's the guy you go with here if you're the Cardinals.
So I think tackle is sort of where some of the tea leaves are reading, especially if we go through some of their free agency deals. They gave a deal to Isaac Seumalo to play left guard. Elijah Wilkinson is sort of the backup tackle. Matt Pryor is also a backup tackle. But I'm also really curious if they just take the best defensive player available in this year's draft. Because if you look at what they did free agency wise, they only added Roy Lopez as a starter to that front seven. You're still potentially starting Cody Simon and Mac Wilson as your middle linebackers, which also makes me wonder, do they take Sonny Styles at 3? Is this the kind of draft where I think Sonny Styles is, with Arvo Reese being one of the 3 best players in this draft class, I think Sonny Styles is one of the other 3 best players in this draft class. So is this a draft where 2 of the first 3 picks are off-ball linebackers? This would be incredible for the positional value versus draft good players debate, because it will make sense for a guy like Sonny Styles to go high, but for a pure off-ball linebacker who doesn't have the same pass rush pop as Arvell Reese, I'm curious if the Cardinals would take a shot there, especially given their history, like you've said, with drafting off-ball linebackers high.
See, that's why I literally cannot. I will not do it to Cardinals fans. I won't give them Sonny Styles there, because if they draft Sonny Styles at number 3 overall, that will make 4 times in the past decade that the Arizona Cardinals will have drafted with a top half of the first round pick, mind you. So a top 16 pick. That will be 4 times that they'll have taken a linebacker. Hassan Reddick, Isaiah Simmons, Zaven Collins, and then Sonny Styles. Now, Sonny Styles is a different cat than all those other ones. I get it. And they were all 3 of those other ones were weird in their own rights, right? Zaven was kind of this jumbo off ball that you thought maybe could rush the passer. Now he's literally an on ball. Hassan Reddick was always kind of a pass rusher that just took him a while to adapt to the NFL game. And then Isaiah Simmons was like a safety that they were projecting to on ball, given what he did at Clemson. So they're 3 hybrid guys. This is the first one that's he's a linebacker. He's going to play linebacker. Yes, no debate there. But man, for Cardinals fans, it's just they've been burned 3 times. I don't think any of those 3 picks before worked out well for the Cardinals. I just can't see them doing it again. But we'll see. We'll get Sonny Styles. He ain't lasting too much longer in this draft. All right, number 4, Tennessee Titans. Reuben Bain Jr. I cannot get over the idea of pairing him with Jeffrey Simmons. Passing on that for David Bailey, to me, would just be, I would not want to do it if I'm a Titans fan. If I'm Robert Saleh, I have a chance to have 2 pure ass kickers on my defensive line, right? 2 guys who are just opposing offensive linemen, do not want to see them on their schedule. That to me is worth more than maybe Bailey's potentially higher ceiling as a pass rusher. I want guys who are going to kick ass up front, and that's Reuben Bain Jr.
And if you think about how Robert Saleh drafted when he was the head coach of the Jets. It's sort of like when it comes to defensive linemen, the only guy that's sort of similar to David Bailey is Will McDonald, the first round pick of the Jets in 2023, and he was picked 15. I feel like with Robert Saleh's defense, Ruben Bain is the better pure fit for what they want from their edges. He's a heavy-handed player who plays strong. He has some of the best hand technique and hand usage in this class, and I think that sort of you overlook the arm length because of that, but he makes up for the lack of arm length with violence and getting in the guy's chest quickly. That's not the biggest thing that you worry about. It's his short arms when you watch him play. Like nobody's really like watching play and like, if he had longer arms, like he would have like 12 sacks instead of like 8 or something, So I do think that Bain is the better fit, and I think he's also the better player over David Bailey. But this just makes it, like I said, it makes sense for the Titans to go after a guy like Bain to put him next to Jeffrey Simmons.
All right, number 5, New York Giants. This is where Sonny Styles goes, the Ohio State linebacker. And the fact that they signed Tremaine Edmonds only makes me more excited to add Sonny Styles to the mix. Because think about the sheer window closing ability of having two of, I mean, truly like the prototype before Sonny Styles in terms of the most impressive size, wingspan, speed athlete at the position. It was Tremaine Edmonds. He's only 28 years old, so it's not like he's at the end of his rope in the NFL. You add the next guy, Tremaine Edmonds 2.0, who actually, already was good in college, to that mix. The things you can do with two athletes like that at the second level, I think that just puts a cherry on top of what should be one of the best front sevens in the NFL.
If you're tired of seeing Dak Prescott throw seam balls to Jake Ferguson, you go out and get 2 6'5" linebackers.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what it feels like. And John Harbaugh has always drafted this kind of player, like the captain of the defense, incredible athlete. He doesn't really care about positional value, and it makes sense to have a guy like Sonny Styles in that defense, especially because behind Tremaine Edmonds is Darius Muasau and Micah McFadden. Like the middle of that defense still isn't shored up, especially after letting Bobby Okereke walk. I just feel like with what they've done in free agency and sort of what John Harbaugh wants in the identity of his team, it makes sense to go for a guy like Sonny Styles here. But I do wonder if in the odd chance that Sonny Styles is gone, where do they go?
This was one where I didn't want to do trades, but I thought this was a good spot for a trade back for a team like the New York Giants. I thought this was one where, say, Ruben Bain's on the board or David Bailey's on the board, and someone wants to go get one of those edge rushers, because I think there's really only 3 that I feel great about, or that will be coveted highly in this edge class. And after that, it's kind of, I would say, slim pickings, or you're just banking on more of a project, or, a guy like Akeem Mesidor who's older and it's a different prospect altogether. So this, to me, if one of those edges is on the board, feels like a potential trade up spot, because the Giants are not drafting one of them, right? You just can't with Kayvon Thibodeau, with Abdul Carter, with Brian Burns, just a logjam there. So I don't know where they would go. Maybe one of the tackles. If Fano's on the board here, potentially that's the pick. But Sonny Styles feels just too right for the New York Giants at this point. Let's get to Cleveland Browns, where I actually like what they did rebuilding this offensive line in free agency. Zion Johnson, Elgton Jenkins, Titus Howard via trade. Left tackle, though, is still the spot where it's like they would love a guy there long-term. DeJuan Jones, obviously on the roster, crazy injury history, has been very up and down over the course of his career. I have them going Monroe Freeling, the Georgia offensive tackle, a guy who is an ascending player, one of the best athletes at the entire combine, only a junior coming out, and just to me, the most prototypical left tackle of the bunch in terms of from a pure traits perspective. And if you're the Cleveland Browns, that's what you're in the market for. You got these other kind of versatile guys. Titus Howard has played tackle and guard. Elgton Jenkins has played literally every position along the offensive line. You don't have the guy who's the firm left tackle the way Monroe Freeling is.
The way they attack free agency makes me think it's going to be tackle at 6. It's going to be Monroe Freeling at 6. When you go out and sign, because they needed every offensive line spot possible in this offseason, they go out and get everybody but the left tackle. It's signaling that they want to draft a tackle at 6 or at 24, but it feels like Freeling is the best blend of what Todd Monken wants in his offensive line. Like you said, he is an ascending player. He played his best football to finish out the season for Georgia, and I just think his flexibility, I think his athleticism, and I think the strength, when you compare him to the other pure tackles in this class, I think he is the most pro-ready because he has that strength and athleticism already, as well as that improving technical repertoire.
Yeah, and I think the only other guy in competition with him at left tackle that I like Caden Proctor's left tackle. I know not a lot of people are going to agree with that, but Caleb Lomu is the only other one who's like a left tackle, and he ain't moving, right? You're playing him at left tackle. The other guys who are potential first rounders are right tackles, whether it's Fano, Blake Miller of Clemson, and Maxie Hanashore of Arizona State. Those are all guys who play on the right side, and you don't need a right side guy. You got Titus Howard. So I think that in this tackle class is more than enough to break a lot of ties. It's just which position do you need, because I don't really want to go flipping a guy who that's the only position he's played. So I think because of that, Monroe Freeling feels like the best fit for the Browns. All right, Washington Commanders at 7. Given their free agency moves, which was basically just throw as much cash as they could at the defensive side of the football. Odafe Owe, Caleb Von Chason, Leo Chanel, Nick Cross, Amik Robertson. They hit literally every position except for defensive tackle, I think, in free agency. They added a couple backup running backs, but I have them going Jeremiah Love here because Jeremiah Love next to Jaden Daniels, I think I wrote this in the write-up. It's not just like the most dynamic backfield in the NFL right now. That might be the most dynamic backfield of all time in the NFL. It would be hard-pressed to find a more impressive athletic duo at quarterback and running back in terms of pure speed and home run ability than those two.
And I think with this move, with drafting Jeremiah Love, you also, not to say you want to take the ball out of Jaden Daniels' hands, but you mitigate the risk of him getting injured running the football. Like, that was one of the biggest issues for the Commanders last season is, can they trust Jaden Daniels to scramble and move around with the ball without being hurt? The best way you can do that is just to give the ball to a guy that you can trust in that backfield. Bill Krosky-Mara is a fun player. I don't know if they can trust him because he was getting outsnapped by Chris Rodriguez Jr. last year. Rashad White is more of a third down back who will probably help in pass protection, but they need some juice. They need some oomph in this offense. And I think they go best offensive player available, honestly. So I feel like they go Love here, but it also makes sense to go receiver. But I love the idea of Jeremiah Love next to Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I think it will be a weapon, right? It will be a running back. It'll be either Love, it'll be a receiver, or I could even see Kenyon Sadiq being in play here at number 7 overall, even if they did sign Chigakonko in free agency as well. But like Sadiq is a unique cat in what he brings to the table to that offense. So also in play, in my opinion. All right, last one before we go to a quick break here. New Orleans Saints. I have them going Ohio State wide receiver Carnell Tate. I am not too worried about the 4.54. He is smooth. He is still the best fit for the Saints, in my opinion, in terms of what they need, which is just a little bit more of a bigger body, right? They need a guy with some catch radius to pair with Tyler Shuck. Because Shuck and that offense, it attacks on the routes that Tate was kind of the best at. The vertical go balls down the sideline where Tate and his ball skills really played. I thought Shuck was very impressive throwing those. He just did not have dudes to haul him in outside of Chris Olave. So adding a weapon that I think is just the best match for Kellen Moore's offense.
And I think that's where I would go. Like, I agree. I definitely agree with you with Tate to the Saints because, like you said, Tyler Shuck needs some explosive playmakers. Chris Olave was able to do that, but it feels like they need some more explosion. Tyler Shuck was able to keep them successful, but they weren't explosive. And I think Tate, despite running the 4.53, again, with the 4.53, I never thought he was running 4.4s. I guess like 4.52 going into this because he's not a super explosive. He's not a super fast guy. He is a long strider at 6'2". He's got long legs. He's gonna build up speed. So I think that just makes the most sense when it comes to his fluidity, the body control on the outside. It complements Chris Olave really well and gives Shuck, like you said, a bigger body to throw the ball to.
All right, we're going to take a quick break after that. Picks 9 through 16 coming up right after this.
This is why we do this every March.
Major slam!
It is a basketball party.
It's March! Expect the unexpected!
All right, Kansas City Chiefs. This is where I went a little off type for them. And I'm curious if, one, he even makes it here. I'm not sure he will. Two, if they would draft him. But I went David Bailey, the Texas Tech defensive end. And I'll explain myself here in a couple parts. First, I think the Chiefs, I always thought, I don't want to say the Jeremiah Love thing was overblown. Maybe they would have drafted him. But I think Brett Veach recognizes that we don't want to draft top 10. We are not expecting to draft top 10 anytime soon with Patrick Mahomes again. And there are certain positions that are just difficult to find if you don't have a top 10 pick. Edge, offensive tackle. And they've found that out kind of the hard way there in Kansas City with how, picks like Felix Anudike-Uzomah and how much that's not worked out. And basically how they ran through Wanya Morris and Kingsley Suamadiia and both just crapped out at tackle. So I believe it's going to be either tackle or edge for the Chiefs, whichever edge falls to them, or whichever tackle is there. Since one of the edges fell to them, I think going David Bailey, even if he doesn't fit their mold of bigger edges that Spags tends to like, I don't want to say he has to update for the modern game, but I think he could update for the modern game in terms of adding a guy with David Bailey's juice to that front seven and his blitz packages.
I definitely agree there. And I do agree with you saying that they're either going to draft tackle or edge. And I feel like I made a lot of Chiefs fans mad on social media when I said they're drafting a tackle or edge at 9 because like Brett Veach has said, they never draft in that spot. And the hardest positions, like you said, to draft are tackle and offensive and defensive line. You're not going to find those guys late in the draft because all the guys that are, it's sort of science. All the guys that are 6'4", 6'5", 300 plus pounds and can move like an NFL offensive lineman are already on NFL rosters that are not yours. So I think they're going to draft tackle or edge at 9. Bailey, like you said, is not a prototypical Spags guy. But where the Chiefs lacked is when Chris Jones would get pressure, nobody could follow it up because everybody was the same type of pass rusher. George Karlaftis was the same type of pass rusher as Ashton Gillotte. Ashton Gillotte was the same type of pass rusher as Charles Omenihu. They have a pitching. It's like having a pitching staff full of guys that only throw 100 miles an hour.
Yeah,
you're just only throwing fastballs. Eventually, the other team's going to catch up. You need somebody who can throw a little off speed, and that's what David Bailey would be. He'd be the off speed pitch, and you don't have to play him early or on early downs because of Karlaftis and Gillotte. So I really like the pick of Bailey here. I would also not be surprised they went Magnola.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I described this. I can't remember which podcast I was on over the combine, but tackle and edge, and I think it goes 1-2 in terms of those are, for my money, the easiest positions to scout on an NFL field. And also, and I think just sort of what we just talked about backs it up that like you don't find a lot of great ones outside the top 10 because they have the highest threshold in terms of athletic traits to get there. You have to be 6'4" plus to play offensive tackle with 33-inch arms and, run a sub 5'1" 40 to really be in contention to be a Pro Bowl / All Pro at that position. It's just like such a high bar to clear. That 0.1% of the population, if that, even can clear. So you're just picking from so much of a smaller pool to be able to play those positions on an NFL field. Because of that, the ones who really got it, who have those things that it takes, they just stand out so much more above the pack. So that's why I think the Chiefs would be smart to go one of those two positions. Cincinnati Bengals at 10. Ohio State safety Caleb Downs. We don't have to stick on this one. Even the signing of Brian Cook at safety does not preclude me from drafting Caleb Downs. I'm going to keep mocking it. They just need reliability on that back end. He can play slot for you. He can play deep for you. He can do a lot of different things for you. That's the beauty of drafting Caleb Downs. So for the Bengals, because of that, I'm still going Caleb Downs.
So I'm curious. I would also go Caleb Downs here just because, obviously, he is, again, one of the best players in this draft class, and he fits what the Bengals want to do and what they need in that secondary. He could play next to Brian Cook at safety. I'm really curious if they give him a shot at nickel, because I think Caleb Downs would be an awesome nickel in the modern NFL. He doesn't miss tackles at all, and I think he has the capability of matching with guys from the slot. But then you have the good question of, do you play Daxton Hill on the outside? Do you play him in the slot? But you can answer those questions when you just have good players. Just find out where those good players go. Just make them fit somewhere. And I think Caleb Downs has this. I'm not going to call him positionless, because I think that's sort of like a buzzword for draft prospects, but he is a versatile player in that secondary. So just get as many good players back there as possible. And Downs is a very good player.
Yeah. Isaiah Simmons was positionless. He's versatile. Positionless actually to me means that they can't play. Positionless means they're not any. Versatile is the word I like to hear about prospects. Miami Dolphins at 11. I have them going Oregon tight end, Kenyon Sadiq. I do think that he just, with Malik Willis, if you have a running quarterback, Sadiq gets so much more intriguing to me for two big reasons. One, he's an awesome blocker in space. And you think about a lot of quarterback option runs, a lot of split zone stuff with the detached Y. He comes across the formation, bluff blocks, gets out to the edge. He's awesome at that sort of stuff. Leading out front, out wide for a quarterback, finding guys in space. That's where Sadiq thrives. So he would be an add-on to the running game. And then in the other factor, the play action game that you have when you have a mobile quarterback and a strong arm quarterback in Malik Willis, we've talked about how he was so good down the field in Green Bay. Well, off of play action, a tight end that runs a 4.39 is a weapon. That's more speed than a lot of wide receivers have off of play action. So to just outrun a safety or outrun a linebacker across the field on a deep over or something like that, Sadiq is the guy you want doing just that. So for those two reasons, I think, they need a bigger bodied wide receiver. They could use someone in their receiving core as well. But Sadiq's such a unique weapon for the Dolphins specifically, and for a guy like Malik Willis, that I think you draft him here, and I think you try to find that wide receiver somewhere on day 2.
As much as I love the idea of Kenyon Sadiq in this offense, and they need size. Like they just need size somewhere. They signed Jalen Tolbert, who is one of the only people on the roster in the skill position group that is above 6 feet. The other person is Ollie Gordon, the running back. I think Kenyon Sadiq would make a lot of sense here. I just wonder if they go defense first, because the only 2 cornerbacks, or the only 3 cornerbacks they signed this season or this offseason, 2 actually, have been Darrell Baker Jr. and Marco Wilson. Not exactly like real needle mover starters in that secondary. So I wonder if they think they need to go best corner between, if they think Jermon McCoy is going to be healthy, Mansour Delane, Avion Terrell. But I could also see the idea of Kenyon Sadiq in that offense, like you said, with a mobile quarterback. Think about all the stuff Isaiah likely does or did with the Ravens, with the split flow. And that's sort of how Kenyon Sadiq wins as a blocker. He is a split flow blocker where you can have him match up against guys at the second and third levels and be basically a lead blocker for Malik Willis. I think that could be too good to pass up.
I will say their secondary is the worst secondary in the NFL on paper right now. So yes, that is their biggest need. It would be hard for them to pass it. To read off who at least our lads has listed as their starters right now: Darrell Baker Jr., Storm Duck, Jason Marster Jr., those are your corners. Dante Trader and Lonnie Johnson are your safeties. I don't think there's not like a single starter amongst those. So they have 5 backups as their starters, which, yes, might lead me to believe that they probably draft a corner. But I still like the fit of Sadiq. I still like it. All right, Dallas Cowboys. I have them going LSU cornerback Mansour Delane here. Maybe this is the better fit for the Dolphins, but I think it's just a great fit for the Cowboys as well. A high floor cornerback for that unit.
It feels like the world's worst secret after leaving the combine, from at least what I was reading, was the Cowboys are going to draft Mansour Delane at 12 if he gets there. Like that, it's the most obvious need for them at corner. The way that they address free agency, they still need those outside corners. And I think in Christian Parker's defense, that has a lot of off coverage, it has a lot of that relies a lot on eyes and processing. I do think Mansour Delane really fits there. And I just love his ability to play in man coverage. And I think that they need healthy, but they need youth in that secondary. And I think Mansour Delane would be a really nice fit.
I'd say it's the Los Angeles Rams. This was the one from the Atlanta Falcons. I have been going USC wide receiver here, Mekhi Lemon. I know it might be a gratuitous, not a need sort of pick, but you look at this roster and there's not a lot of needs that jump out to you, right? They did a great job addressing cornerback. I mean, they just literally stole the Chiefs secondary, right, this offseason with Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson. So that ceased to be a need. Now, maybe they could use a linebacker who can cover a little bit better, but it's an awesomely deep linebacker class. You don't need to do that at 13. Yeah, you don't plan on picking 13 again anytime soon. So maybe, like we said, you go to one of the valuable positions. Maybe you just add edge depth. Maybe you just add offensive line depth. I could very easily see that. But I think Mekhi Lemon is just a Sean McVay wide receiver. Sean McVay wide receiver. And a guy who would thrive in that offense.
Yeah, and I think given all the moves that the Rams have made, and given the way that everybody outside of the in the organization has talked about this draft class and what they've said, I'm going to reference from March. Sean McVay said you never want to reach for a need in the draft. It's about getting good players they have a lot of like and love for, and that they have a vision for. And to me, that says they're drafting the pass catcher at 13. And Lemon is the better fit when it comes to playing immediately and helping the team win the Super Bowl immediately.
Yep.
And I think the biggest thing for him, he is my wide receiver one. I love the guy. I wonder if he can grow to be an outside guy, an outside X, as Puka Nacua continues to be like the sort of Z-type receiver, or is Puka going to become the X and Mekhi Lemon becomes the Z to sort of gracefully age out Devontae Adams?
Good problem to have if you are the Los Angeles Rams. And that's the thing is this guy has to play right now. You know, I think I don't always advocate for making short-term decisions in the draft. I wouldn't call this just a short-term decision, but like he can make an impact for you right now. He can play tomorrow for you in that offense. And because of that, I think it's just well worth that pick. All right, 14, Baltimore Ravens. Do we put from Las Vegas Raiders in this? Do we put like the via after the name?
I think we got to put via Las Vegas, via Baltimore.
Via Baltimore. Yes. You gotta get it right, because this was the Raiders pick for a hot second before the Ravens came to their senses and realized they vastly overpaid. I think like, was that, do we think that conversations occurred inside the Ravens building to that very effect that, hey, that was way too much to give up considering what Trey Hendrickson's asking price is materializing to be this offseason?
I think it was a combination of the asking price is a lot, and also Max Crosby might not be healthy, which they knew going in, but giving up 2 first-round picks for a guy who might only play 12 games or 11 games, I don't know if they wanted to do that. So that's sort of how I'm sort of compartmentalizing it. But I do also think they could have been like, yeah, we'll do the deal, and then saw Trey Hendrickson still available and was like, hold on, let me see what we can do here.
I would love to hear a timeline. We'll obviously never get it, but it's hard to see the exact timeline and think that there was not nefarious intent. It's hard to police things like that, but well, I would much rather have 2 first-round picks the next 2 years and Trey Hendrickson than no 2 first-round picks and Max Crosby. I'll just say that. So it ended up working out for them, and they get Francis Maui-Noa here, the Miami offensive lineman that we've given it to them a bunch. I think pretty much every single mock draft. It just makes too much sense for them. Even after signing John Simpson, he can play left guard for you, or Maui-Noa at right. So you'll be fine. Tampa Bay Bucks, 15. I am going Caden Proctor here. I think to play left guard. I do think the Bucks need their offensive line, or not the Bucks. Baker Mayfield needs his offensive line to be stellar to be successful. This keeps that offensive line stellar.
I wonder if this is a sneaky Jordan Tyson team. Like, given the way that Emeka Egbuka struggled as the X last season, and I'm not saying Emeka Egbuka can't improve, because that was something that I said on Twitter after Mike Evans' time with the 49ers, is I'm curious to see who steps up on the outside for the Bucks this season, given that was Mike Evans' area. And Baker Mayfield clearly trusted Evans in that spot. I'm curious if that's a sneaky Tyson team, because if he's healthy, he can be the outside X, and you have Ibuka be sort of the movement. He becomes the, I guess you call him a Gen Z Chris Godwin. I think that's what we'll call him, Gen Z Chris Godwin, and have Jalen McMillan be the super like wide receiver 3 in that offense. So I wonder if there's sort of a sneaky Tyson team if they do offense. I feel like they're going to go defense, given the way that they sort of like they've cobbled together their defensive free agency, but none of them have been like pure starters. Or like Ashawn Robinson's probably going to be like your starting like 5 tech on defensive line, but he's a run defense guy. Al-Qadim Muhammad's a designated pass rusher. Anzalone is going to be a coverage linebacker. So maybe they don't draft linebacker at 15, but I do wonder if this is a defense pick or, like you said, given the way that Baker struggles with the offensive line, Proctor there would be a lot of fun next to Tristan Wirfs.
I do love the idea of Jordan Tyson in that offense. That is the skill set that they don't have when you look across that receiving core. So I would love that, but I do just think this is sort of I call it the eat your vegetables pick. Just keep the offensive line at a really high level. That's your path to maximizing Baker, in my opinion. Jets, last one before we get to a break. Pick 16 from the Indianapolis Colts. And from the Sauce Gardner trade, we get back Jermod McCoy, a guy whose sophomore tape I would put in the realm of someone like a Sauce Gardner, right? I thought that's the kind of prospect we were going to get. Obviously, towards ACL last January, never played, but a real boom. I don't even call him boom or bust. I don't know what the downside is to a Jermod McCoy if you get a clean bill of health. It's just, is he going to be healthy by the time the draft rolls around to make you feel good about what he could be at the NFL level? For the Jets, you don't really need him to play right away. You need him to be a star in years 2 or 3, and that's the guy who I think very easily could be.
And I'm glad that the Jets in free agency sort of addressed the corner spot with Nashawn Wright to at least get a starter in there. That's a 1-year deal, but you can't keep playing Brandon Stephens out there. Jermod McCoy, I think if he is healthy and you get him at 16, it might be one of the biggest steals of this draft because when he's healthy, he is a top 5 pick. But because we haven't seen him in well over a year, like we just don't know what he's going to be. And his case of injury, if he gets a clean bill of health, it's going to be one of the most fascinating profiles in this draft class because how did that sap his athleticism? How did that change his ability to change direction? But with the Jets, Aaron Glenn loves his corners. I feel like he's going to be fighting Darren Mogi like tooth and nail to go get a corner in this draft class because there are some guys I think he would love.
Yeah, I do think they're drafting a corner with that pick 16. I think it makes that's where the value is going to end up at that position. And again, they're not using pick 2 on a corner, so still a need. All right, take a quick break. After that, get into the second half of round 1.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ hits every highlight from all the sports that matter to you.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, streaming free 24/7.
All right, Detroit Lions, pick 17. Don't even need to stay on this one long. The reasoning's obvious. The fit's obvious. Caleb Lomu, the Utah tackle, going to the team that just had Taylor Decker request his release. It's easily their biggest need. We talked about their offensive line going downhill. This one makes a lot of sense. 18, Minnesota Vikings. Oregon safety Dylan Thieneman added to that Brian Flores defense. Maybe it's high, but his combine was elite. His tape and coverage, some of the best in the safety class.
I'm so curious whether Flores chooses between Thieneman and Avion Terrell here because I think both guys are very fitting for what Brian Flores wants in the respective positions. Terrell is a feisty corner, plays bigger than his size. He's really smooth in coverage, and he like I said, he plays with that dog in him. He's just not the biggest guy. It's almost sort of the opposite of his brother AJ Terrell, which I think is very funny. Yeah. Like Terrell is the prototypical like size, speed corner, but Avion Terrell might have the better tape, which is going to be a Thanksgiving table discussion for that family for the longest time. But Thieneman fits sort of what they're potentially missing in Harrison Smith, and I'm not typecasting here. It's just the range and what Brian Flores asked Harrison Smith to do. You can see Thieneman doing that, and I think some of his tape at Oregon asked him to do a lot more quarters and post stuff, but at Purdue, the athleticism you saw at the combine was on the tape at Purdue. He was a single high safety at Purdue, making incredible plays from depth and from range. So I think Flores is going to love that in that defense.
Yeah, I do not actually. I've seen people give him the Cooper DeJean slot move. No, he's not.
No.
Slot. He is at his best deep. His range shows routinely. He can cover from depth. That is where you want him playing. That's where like the Vikings in that defense would deploy him. All right, Carolina Panthers, Clemson defensive tackle Peter Woods. I think they found out that Turk Wharton's kind of a limited DT last year. He's much more of a third down guy, spot player than what maybe they thought when they paid him. They obviously added Jalen Phillips in free agency. You got Nick Scorton, who you expect to improve in year 2. You obviously have Derek Brown. This kind of rounds out the overhaul of what probably 2 years ago was the worst defensive line in the NFL. Now it could actually be a pretty formidable unit adding Peter Woods to the mix.
Dan Morgan said this offseason he was going to fix the pass rush. If you heard him talk in the offseason, I think he told one of the radio stations their pass rush was not acceptable this past season. And when you watch them play, it shows. And I think going on adding Jalen Phillips, going on adding Devin Lloyd, and now adding Peter Woods, you're turning up that pass rush. You're having the ability to win with 4 if you wanted to. Ejiro Evero does not blitz. So I think you need to get guys that can win in one-on-one situations. And I think having a guy like Peter Woods who slimmed down and then moved to nose for Clemson this year, which is not what you want to do with a defensive tackle. I'm not an expert, but you don't slim a guy down and move him to nose tackle. But I think at playing sort of that 3 to 5 tech in that defense, I think he can really shine.
Yeah, that's where he is. He is not, again, a nose tackle. He's not an edge. The Clemson, I have beef with Clemson. They do their prospects dirty, dude. Every time I watch a prospect from Clemson, I'm just like, what the hell is this? Especially defensive line. Yeah, that's all I'll say about that. All right, Dallas Cowboys, pick 20. This obviously comes from the Green Bay Packers. I have them going Clemson right tackle, Blake Miller. This is the Cowboys we're talking about. 3 of their 5 starters are already first-round picks. They've done it historically. Go back to the line with Zach Martin, Travis Frederick, Tyron Smith. Those guys were all first-round picks. They do it. If with 2 first-round picks, I expect one of them to be an offensive lineman. And I think this one makes sense with Blake Miller here. Doesn't have to necessarily start right away with Terrence Steele there, but Steele's play of late is replacement worthy, especially the fact that the other 4 positions look like he got the start of something special on that offensive line.
I feel like Cowboys fans would riot if they saw this happen, but it makes sense. Like you said, Terrence Steele hasn't exactly been great, and he's been replacement level, and you need to get younger there. You need to raise the ceiling a little bit, especially as you try and compete in an NFC that is loaded, especially at pass rush. You have to face the Eagles twice a year. You have to face the Giants twice a year. You have to face the retooled Commanders twice a year. The pass rushes are not going to stop happening. And I think Blake Miller, when it comes to that group of right tackles between Miller, Iheanacho, and then I guess the field at right tackle, I think Miller probably has the highest floor between the 2 of them. While Iheanacho might have a high ceiling, I don't think he's ready to play right now. And I think that's where the Cowboys need. They need somebody who can help them win right now.
And I think Miller, right now, I think he's a much better run blocker too. Is I think like where would separate me for the Cowboys, because that's where they hang their hat right now. They are a movement generating offensive line. I mean, this is an ass kicking front that if you add a guy like Miller will only make that better. All right, 21, Pittsburgh Steelers. I have them going Ty Simpson, the Alabama quarterback. I don't know. I don't know what to do with Steelers, but I do know the only reason you bring in Mike McCarthy is if you want a young quarterback. That to me is the only reason you bring in Mike McCarthy. His track record of developing quarterbacks was the rationale behind making him your next head coach. That is the one thing that he can say and has done effectively over the course of his career. Now, will he do it with Ty Simpson? Will he work magic there? I don't know, but I think that's why they brought him in the first place, is to get his hands on a young quarterback in this draft.
I don't think the Steelers should keep waiting around for Aaron Rodgers. I know Aaron Rodgers is going to do this again, where he's going to wait until like June to make a decision. And you can't keep being hamstrung by this guy. You have to either move, you have to tell him to make a decision now or move on, because they are moving on. You have to move on if you are the Steelers. You don't. And again, this goes back to the entire process of letting Mike Tomlin leave and hiring Mike McCarthy. You don't let Mike Tomlin leave the building unless you are ready to move on into a new era. A new era means new quarterback. And I just think that Simpson is clearly like the best guy behind Mendoza at this point. But I do want to throw out a couple names for you potentially at 21 if they don't pick Simpson. The first one's Omar Cooper Jr., who I feel like would fit really well in the slot for them between Pittman and DK Metcalf, can do sort of the explosive in-between stuff, yards after catch. The other one is CJ Allen, linebacker from Georgia. I think there's been a lot of rumblings about Patrick Queen not being happy, potentially Patrick Queen wanting a trade request. It would feel very like Tomlin-y to go pick the Georgia linebacker, but CJ Allen's been the green dot since he was young. He called the plays in Glenn Schumann's defense. I feel like that would be a really Pittsburgh pick.
I could also see Vega Ioane there as well, because if you're just stacking up, where's like the needs on this roster? There's not a lot, truthfully, but left guard probably qualifies as one of them. Which, speaking of, Vega Ioane is the next pick to the Los Angeles Chargers here. Pick 22. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh refers to his linemen as weapons. He had no weapons by the end of last year. This just kind of gives you more of a floor. And, I'm not sure he's a great fit for Mike McDaniel's offense. He's not like you're obviously the ideal guard for it, but he's more athletic than your average 320-pounder. It's not like he'd be bad in it whatsoever. And he's obviously fantastic in pass pro. You know that from watching his tape. So for the Chargers, given the fact of how last season went, I think this is just another insurance against that happening again.
Everything's coming up Chargers this season. If you get Mike McDaniel, the best offensive coordinator available, you go out and draft Vega Ioane, who is sort of thought to be a top 15 pick at 22. It feels very similar to what the Seahawks did with Gray Zabel, and how Zabel kind of, with the Seahawks having Charles Cross, Abe Lucas, they had a noticeable hole at guard that limited their run game and also limited their pass protection. Chargers had an obvious hole at guard, limited both facets of their offense. You plug Vega Ioane in, you are set at least at left guard, left tackle, right tackle for the next decade. And I mean, the Seahawks won the Super Bowl with that formula. Let's see what the Chargers can do.
All right, Philadelphia Eagles at 23. I have them going Arizona State offensive tackle Maxi Honachor. We've discussed him at length, one of the most intriguing prospects in this draft. And I was surprised looking back. I think we talk about Howie Roseman and say, offensive line. He's always addressing offensive line. He always addresses valuable positions early. Well, they haven't taken an offensive lineman top 2 rounds since 2022. Haven't taken one in the first round since 2019. With Lane Johnson turning 36 in a couple months, with just the way the offensive line kind of went backwards with Lane Dickerson's injury history, I think this is time he gets back to his roots and drafts a guy named Honachor who's, you don't have Jeff Stoutland there anymore, obviously, the offensive line coach, the famous one, but I think you still need to replenish for life after Lane.
Yeah, and I think this would be the perfect pick if Jeff Stoutland was still here. Oh. But even with Stoutland gone, I feel like preparing for life after Lane Johnson is always going to be a very good move. Missed a few games last season, and you could tell that the offense looked drastically different with Lane Johnson out. We've talked about Honachor. He is one of the most fascinating prospects of this class. Really a late riser, like a late bloomer as a prospect, which, I mean, it sort of besets like he's an older prospect, but late bloomer. He didn't start playing like football until junior college. But I think his athleticism, I think the foot speed, I think it just really matches with what the Eagles want to become, which is a very wide zone-based team. I do wonder, given how much they tried to go after Jalen Phillips and could keep Jalen Phillips, and he left, how much there's sort of been some rumblings around their defensive line, like who stays and who goes. I wonder if this is Keldrick Falk territory, because he has that that versatility that Fangio would probably want in a defensive lineman.
See, I'm quite a bit lower on Kelvin Falk than even pick 23, which is why I wouldn't take him here. But like I said, Eagles, I think this will be a line of scrimmage pick. You will get either O-line or D-line. They've been straying too far from that the past few years. All right, 24, Cleveland Browns, second pick of the first round. Monroe Fielding was their first one. Arizona State wide receiver Jordan Tyson is the pick here. I think it's a dream scenario for them. Kind of everything they need in that receiving core of just someone who can get open, truthfully. So it feels like, given what they've done in free agency, and just given that this defense is the house, picks 1 and 2 for them in this first round will be O-line, wide receiver, and I think this is the order that makes the most sense.
And he also gives them some size in that offense. They've sort of had the mold of the smaller, quicker, like shiftier guys. And I think Jordan Tyson can improve in playing big. Sometimes he plays a little too small, but his body control, the fluidity, the explosiveness, if he's healthy, that is all the makings of a top receiver in the NFL. And won't even have to pay for a apartment because his brother Jalen Tyson plays for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I think that is the perfect scenario for the Tysons, but also for the Browns, who completely flipped the future of their offense in 2 moves.
All right, there's first 24 picks. We got the last 8 here coming up right after this.
You think you understand how this business works, but you don't.
I now know why Mommy was so stressed.
What's the plan here?
Landman, new season now streaming only on Paramount Plus.
All right, Chicago Bears 25. I have them going Akeem Mesidor, the Miami defensive end. This is one of my favorite fits. I've mocked this one a lot because they feel like a team that needs a guy right now. Right? They need the upgrade in pass rush today. You know, they were bottom 5 in pressure rate. All they added in free agency was Neville Gallimore, Contavious Street. Like, it's not getting better just in terms of what's on paper. Now, I think, you know, Austin Booker will, going into year 3, given how young he was, I think he'll improve. And I think Booker and Sweat are your starters, and Mesidor is not necessarily playing full-time snaps right away, but he's at least just a guy who's competent and versatile. I mean, he played nose tackle to start his career at West Virginia. He can play inside, outside, rush from either. So just another piece to get pressure on opposing quarterbacks.
And you need to get pressure if you are the Bears and you are Dennis Allen. You need guys who can win in one-on-one situations. And Mesidor has the ability to win with hand technique and win with inside counters. I do worry about the lack of a power profile a little bit. And I think sometimes his just the run game isn't necessarily his strongest suit. But again, you don't have to play him on early downs. You can have him be a designated pass rusher. I'm really curious how that edge group past Bailey sort of shakes out, because there's a clump of guys, in my opinion, there are a clump of guys between Mesidor, Cassius Howell, Keldrick Falk, and Oklahoma's R. Mason Thomas, who all sort of like, it depends on who you talk to, but all sort of feel like mid to late first round, early second round guys. So I'm curious how those guys sort of shake out and how Mesidor ranges between those guys, because he has the most obvious like floor, but also has the most obvious issues.
Let's talk about the Bills and 49ers picks in tandem, because they're both wide receivers. I have the Bills going Casey Concepcion. I have the 49ers going Omar Cooper Jr., even though obviously the Bills added DJ Moore via trade and the 49ers added Mike Evans in free agency. Do you think, one, these teams both need a wide receiver, and two, are these the fits you like more, or would you swap them?
I love Casey Concepcion as a Buffalo Bill. When you think about what the Bills need, it is separation, like instant separation. Like DJ Moore is a very good, like number 2 receiver who can do all of the mesh and all of the crossing route stuff and also be explosive downfield. But you need someone to create separation. You need, in the best way possible, you need, like, it's comparing to basketball again, you need someone who can go get you a bucket on like third down. In their man-to-man coverage, you need someone to go get you a bucket. And Casey Concepcion is a bucket getter when it comes to creating separation and playing on the outside. The drops are an issue. I think there might be more technique than concentration, but I like the fit there. And I also like Omar Cooper Jr. in San Francisco because he fits the mold of what Kyle Shanahan wants as a slot receiver. And you can have Pearsall on the outside, Mike Evans. But with drafting Cooper, you're also not like, with adding Mike Evans and having Ricky Pearsall, two great players, both cannot stay healthy. Just keep adding to the room because you are the 49ers. Something is going to happen. And you're going to be down to like wide receiver 3 and wide receiver 4 playing a lot of snaps. So I like adding Cooper Jr. there for the Niners, especially because all of the right tackles are also gone.
Yes. Yeah, I think offensive line would make a lot of sense here, but 8 have already come off the board in this mock draft. All right, 28 Houston Texans. I have them going Ohio State DT, Caden McDonald. Now, again, offensive line would be great, but 8 have come off the board here already. So there's not really another, maybe you get a Chase Basantis here, the Texas A&M guard. Maybe you, I like Keelan Rutledge too, but these are probably, in my opinion, just a little rich for both. Whereas Caden McDonald, you put Caden McDonald on this team and no one ever runs the football. Just like, no, there's just no more options. I love Caden McDonald here because it kind of, I don't want to say completes the Texans defense. It's already a very complete defense. But it brings them to a level of eliteness in both the pass rushing and run defense categories that just they can win a Super Bowl just on the backs of this defense with just a modicum of help offensively.
As an NFL fan, Caden McDonald to the Texans is awesome. As a Jaguars fan, that sucks because the one thing you think you could do on the Texans is run the ball at them. They haven't had like a true nose tackle. Tommy Togiai has played well beyond his pay grade, but they need an impact nose tackle. And Caden McDonald can do that. It takes a lot of pressure off Sheldon Rankins, Togiai. You can rotate that defensive line, keep them fresh. And it just, with all the offensive linemen off the board, going best defensive lineman available, honestly, is not a bad option.
All right, 29, Kansas City Chiefs. Dream scenario in the pick they got from Los Angeles Rams. I have them going cornerback, Avion Terrell. To me, he is the comp I have for him is, why am I blanking on his name? Trent McDuffie. That's the comp I have for him in my notes. It's just that is the way he plays. He's undersized, but you never know it watching his tape. He's physical as can be. He can play slot. He can play outside. Makes a lot of plays on the football. This is who you want if you're not going to have Trent McDuffie on the roster.
Spags is gonna love him. That was my first thought is Spags is gonna love Avion Terrell because he's also just got a nose for the football. He's always making plays on the ball. 5 forced fumbles. I'm gonna keep going back to it, but it's insane. 5 forced fumbles as a corner in his final season at Clemson. He is active in the run game. He wants to be involved, and I think that fits so well with what the Chiefs want to be. I also wonder if they consider a guy like Denzel Boston here just for the different body type at receiver than what they have currently on the roster. But given what their secondary looks like right now, like I think drafting Avion Terrell and getting out of there would be perfect.
Yeah. All right, Denver Broncos, pick 30. I have them going. This is where Keldrick Falk comes off the board. They lost John Franklin Myers in free agency. I think that's kind of who Keldrick Falk can be at the next level. It's maybe his best case scenario. Someone like that. Just the versatility of the body type in that front seven, I think, is very valuable to that defense.
Again, as someone with a team in the AFC, this is terrible. But as an NFL fan, this is awesome. It makes sense for Falk to go to a defensive coordinator like Vance Joseph who can maximize his ability and what he can do right now. I mean, he's still a very young player. He is one of the smoothest and one of the best run defenders in this class. And I think he has the flexibility and the capability to be a very good pass rusher. It's just about finding the best spot for him. Honestly, I think he should just bulk up and play defensive tackle. When you're that young, you can put on as much weight as you possibly can without losing speed and be a defensive tackle. But trying to slim down, I don't know if that's the best spot for him. But John Franklin Myers would be a really, really nice comparison for what he can be.
All right, 31, New England Patriots. They used pick 4 last year on what I would deem a culture fit. Maybe not the best prospect there, but a guy who fits culture. This is a similar one. I think they would definitely use 31 on such. And it's CJ Allen, the Georgia linebacker. you love his tape. I love his tape. Very much a universally liked prospect for obvious reasons. And I think given how the Patriots want to play defense, this is a guy that's just like, yes, put him right in the center of that next to Robert Spillane, and the defense improves overnight.
That is a Mike Vrabel linebacker. Like when you watch CJ Allen play, the instincts in the run game, the ability to get off of blocks, I think he's expanding his range as a pass defender, which I think doesn't really get discussed as much with his final season at Georgia because he was hampered by injury. But he was doing a lot of stuff range-wise and coverage-wise that he wasn't doing in previous years. And I think that growth is really important for his game. But he is a captain in the middle of that defense. And they need some more youth, some more explosiveness from that second level. And CJ Allen fits the bill.
Last pick of the first round here, Seattle Seahawks. I have them going Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, the Toledo safety. I always save safeties for last in terms of watching because, let's be honest, I hate safeties. Watching safeties, it's just like 90% of plays, they don't do a damn thing. So it takes forever to really get a handle on a safety. And I kept going back to, I think this guy's tape is special. Now, the unfortunate thing is it was Toledo. The level of competition is not what it would have been, should he have been playing in the SEC. But all he could do was go up against who he's going up against, and he was dominant. I mean, just the only issue I saw on his tape this past year, not the only issue, but he missed a good amount of tackles, but he plays such a physical game. If you can just clean some of that up, I think you are getting a guy who, he's not like Nick Manwari, but you have a large bodied safety with range and instincts that can replace Kobe Bryant in that secondary, even if, very different skill set from Kobe Bryant, but this guy is a well-rounded safety, even if his size would call him just a box only. I think he can really be anything in an NFL defense.
I think he's a post safety in a quarters defense, which is perfect for what Mike McDonald needs. When you think about where the Seahawks struggled, and this defense struggled this season, it was Matthew Stafford throwing no-look digs over the middle of the field. And Ernest Jones did his best. And he has even said, Fred Warner has said, it's tough playing against Matthew Stafford because he'll just move you. The best way to eliminate that is by having arms and legs in the middle of the field. Just make it really difficult to throw around them. And Emmanuel McNeil-Warren is super long. I think he's got the length to play safety. He can be a guy that comes from the top down. I think the missed tackles thing is really fascinating because one of the things that I have in my report for McNeil-Warren is he sort of freelances a little bit. He's gonna swing and miss. I think he is prime, if you remember Adam Dunn from the MLB, the Adam Dunn fans know he's going to hit a 450-foot homer or he's going to swing out in 3 pitches or strike out in 3 pitches. He's going to swing in all of them. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren is going to strike out sometimes, but when it hits, he makes a lot of impact plays. So getting him under Mike McDonald, I think would be the best situation for him, and it's a perfect fit for what he can do right now.
Adam Dunn. I'm here in Cincy, but I didn't always live in Cincy, but I went to a game in Cincy when I think around 2010, and he hit the farthest home run I've ever seen in my entire life. There's a ship on top of center field, or a steamboat on top of center field. He hit over the steamboat. I think I went up and looked afterwards, and it was 490 in the game. And I was just oh my God, when that guy hit the ball, it just sounded different. But that's a good analogy because I saw the exact same thing on McNeil-Warren's tape. Is there are sometimes he will be breaking, he'll be running underneath stuff before receivers even broke a lot of times, off of play action concepts he saw. I love seeing safeties that do that, who are willing to trust their instincts, because not to say that they can obviously be taken out of position, but his hit rate was good. He wasn't quite Adam Dunn. He was closer to, a Shohei Ohtani in terms of his hit rate on stuff like that. So I was very impressed with his ability to read, diagnose, and take those swings and misses, because he hit a lot of home runs on his tape, man. There's a lot of plays that are just sick when you watch Emmanuel McNeil-Warren's tape. So adding that to that defense, yeah, I think that's something they'd be interested in. There's your first round. Check it out on cbssports.com if you want to read my full write-ups. Haven't done any trades yet. I think next time we do a mock draft, we'll have to add some trades, because I said it off the rip. This draft class, I think we'll see a lot of picks traded. We almost saw 2 over the first week of free agency. I think there will be more as we go from now until the draft. And we'll break down every single one when we get there. So thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, keep pushing.